Welcome back to another special edition of Talk Fulton. My name is Kathleen Brown, Public Art Education Coordinator with Fulton County Arts and Culture. I'm joined today by Atlanta Downtown Artist in Resident at the Public Art Futures Lab, Samantha Richardson. Samantha, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Samantha, you joined us during our open call in December. What drew you to apply for this residency?
Oh, yeah. Well, last year I had joined, I attended a ladies' wine and design put on by Sarah Lawrence. And at the time, she was kind of my introduction to the Future Lab space and thought it was really cool. And also right now I'm considering a slight shift of moving away from corporate design and more into figuring out what being an artist looks like for me.
And Sarah Lawrence was a 2022 MARTA Artbound Artist in Residence for the Public Art Futures Lab. So what was it maybe about like the way she portrayed her experience that drew you to it?
Oh, I thought the abstract nature of the work was really cool, and it felt like almost like community therapy in a way. I think there's probably some overlaps in our projects in that way where my project also is dealing a lot with abstract shapes, and I'm interested in the idea of art as a therapeutic practice.
And your project was talking about using risograph vintage printing techniques to work with digital animation. Can you kind of talk about how you're using that?
Yeah. So right now I'm diving into creating animations in After Effects. I'm really inspired by 60s animation and risograph techniques that are being used all over the world. So for those who don't know, Riso is basically screen printing inside of a Xerox machine, sort of. But you get these super vibrant colors and interesting misregistrations and textures that make the work feel very handmade and tactile. So I'm creating animations digitally in After Effects and then creating contact sheets and printing those on my Riso and then going and scanning them back in. And it just adds so much life and personality to the animations.
So it's a very process heavy thing that you're doing. How has the residency funding and support been able to help you really focus in on that?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the intense parts of Riso is that it's a lot of upfront costs. So being able to get funding for a Riso drum just has helped me accelerate my growth in a way that would have been hard for me to do on my own. And also being able to set aside time free from commercial work or trying to create income where I can just explore and play. I mean, I've been a designer now for about 12 years, and that sort of opportunity is really, really rare. You're always trying to listen to your clients and understand them and create work for them. And this opportunity has given me a chance to figure out to explore what I'm interested in and what I want to create.
You talked a little bit about how the architectural elements or maybe even just feelings or vibes that are coming out of Atlanta as a place are going to be embedded in the work. Could you kind of talk about your thoughts around that?
Yeah. So starting off in learning this process, I've been pretty inspired by geometric shapes and geometry and moving through different geometric spaces. And so I am taking some inspiration from Atlanta architecture, but also there is something kind of ethereal about this creative energy that moves through Atlanta. I mean, I feel like what Atlanta is known for is their creative scene, how the culinary scene, the music scene. And so there's just this energy that moves through the city that I hope to capture also in my work.
Can we talk about pink in your work, in your life?
Yeah. I think art has always been a way that I feel comfortable in myself and able to like feel safe to show up as myself in different spaces. So there's a lot of like my personal sensibilities in my work, and it's a way that I express my feminist values too.
In a time when so much technology has this kind of like environmental negative, I kind of love that Riso printing has an environmental, maybe neutral impact.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah, Riso is really cool that the inks are plant-based, soy-based inks. And also the machine doesn't require any heat to run, as opposed to other printing techniques. And I also use like recyclable paper and different like standards around that. So I feel pretty good about that. And also if my cat gets a little bit on him when I'm Riso printing, I'm maybe a little less concerned. Although I feel like it's not technically edible. It's vegetable based. So
I love that. You're going to dye your cat. So when we're talking about what your final project will be, Atlanta Downtown always allows artists to use the digital signage.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us any teasers about what you're thinking this work how people might interact with it in the future?
Yeah, so right now the work's coming to life through a lot of like GIFs. I feel like I've kind of been a through line. I've like kind of always been interested in GIFs because I've touched a little bit in motion design in my career, but mostly focusing on design and just like living in that sort of ethereal space between traditional media and like in a medium that can only exist in the context of the internet. So yeah, you'll probably see like some really mesmerizing looping animations. And I'm also like challenging myself in new ways. Like my career in design has been a lot of focus on brand design and doing like strategies and things around branding and that sort of like visual language for different companies. And so I'm challenging myself a lot in this residency to like push my skills as an illustrator and as an animator in new ways. So I'm still figuring some things out as we go.
And I remember you had talked briefly about how AI or was like in some aspect of maybe your process before. Is that coming into play in this work?
Yeah, it hasn't yet. So some ways that I have been using AI in the past like year is that drawing has been, even since I was in art school, has been kind of a little bit of a insecurity of mine of like I am a conceptual thinker and really like a lot of the high level work, but some of the processes like the drawing part can be very intimidating for me. So I have been leaning on AI to like help me create different compositional references and get new ideas. I think in a lot of my work, you probably would never know that I used AI because it's a part of my process, but not really part of like my final product. But something I'm interested in doing with this animation project is taking a bank of the work that I'm creating and then seeing if I can generate like more of it and see if AI can learn some of the novelties that make risograph animation so beautiful.
Awesome. So like feeding your own style and your own interest into it. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, I think that the place you are in your career, you're like wanting to like jump out, do it on your own. I think that's a really relatable place for a lot of artists or people who are exploring making art something more than a hobby. Is there any advice you would give to artists who are looking at opportunities like these that you've learned along the way?
I think what I've been focusing on a lot in the past year is like being comfortable asking for help. where I need it. And like, I think one of the struggles that I've had with art and like maybe even some burnout around being in a creative career is that you can feel a tremendous amount of pressure to say something important and valuable and to make art worth looking at. And now I'm becoming in a space where I'm like really excited about advocating for other artists and collaborating with other artists and taking a lot of that pressure off of myself to like do everything on my own. Even in my design practice, I've been bringing on like a design assistant, and that has like freed me up to, to do different types of work and to have space to feel safe and supported to explore. So I just say investing in yourself creatively, while at times it may feel like a risk, I feel like it always has paid off for me, even if it's scary, it is always moving me forward. So try to feel safe taking risks and see where you can ask for support when it's overwhelming.
That's really great. So you have these, what are now kind of two separate sides of your practice, this design practice and this more like just exploration. How are you finding ways to merge that? And like, what's the ultimate? Do you see an ultimate goal, or are you just following it?
Yeah. So I purchased the Riso printer like last October, and ever since then, it's usage bound, so you have to like use it, once a month or something. So I have been feeling like this like question of like, how am I going to incorporate this into my practice and things like that. Where I'm at now is kind of bridging the gap between the design work that I do for my clients and offering Riso printing to my clients and being able to create art through that. So one example, I have a client right now that I just did designs of packaging for, and I was like pitching, well, we can do this insert and Riso print it, and that would be something that I would design for them and also Riso print and like ship it out. It can feel like at times kind of like when you're going through any sort of career shift, there's kind of like these different goals that you have. And so at times it can feel overwhelming of like, this is where I want to be all the way over here, but this is where I am now. So a lot of what I do as like a small business owner is thinking through logistics and plans of like, this is my long-term goal. And how do I get there like sustainably over time?
And with those like tools that are kind of going to be helping with this project, the scanner that you needed like large enough to be able to scan some of these like printed, and then getting the Riso completely up and ready. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that supply wise is going into this?
Oh, project? Yeah. So a lot of like equipment that I've sort of accumulated over time is like touch my work in different ways. I'm actually working on a couple other side projects that we haven't even had a chance to talk about, but some of them is like I have a silhouette, which is like basically kind of like a cricket, and using those to like cut out shapes in different ways. So I use a lot of kind of different experimental tools, and am okay taking on like what some people might think is like overcomplicating a project, because I see the opportunity to solve a problem as being I feel like that in the end will be so rewarding and feed back into my practice that I encourage myself to take those kinds of risks. So the thing I'm working on right now also is a lot of Riso presses. They have a swatch book. So I'm working on doing like my own swatch book and what that would look like to have like a custom die cut on it.
I love that. You're also able to use the Futures Lab. And I know like you talked about learning or finding in yourself this want to advocate for other artists and like spread knowledge. So have you thought about using the Futures Lab as a space to connect with the community or spread, awareness about creative careers?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I've been thinking about a lot from the artist angle, because we have a workshop coming up soon around the risograph. And like, that's definitely something I'm excited about sharing with other artists. But a lot of the times, to be honest, because I'm new in the artist space, I'm just so inspired by being around all these other really talented artists, the other residents. I have a lot to learn from them as far as like letting go of my fears and anxieties and just expressing myself kind of like creatively and authentically like a lot of our other residents. But I think that was a good point that you brought that up, because I think that kind of the logistical side of what I've done and how I'm able to get to this point right now was by like figuring out my design retainers and setting boundaries with clients and figuring out finances and to have a creative career. And that is something I feel like I could definitely share with other artists, my experience at least.
Awesome. So the workshop, what is that going to entail?
Yeah. So next Friday, that will be the 1st of August. We're doing a workshop at the Underground, and I'll have a presentation about risograph printing and the beauty of Riso, like what it is and why I find it so interesting. And then also going through my process as far as like how I'm doing the work for the residency and just kind of like sharing all that. A lot of these like risograph workshops, I've been fortunate enough to go to different workshops, but they can be quite costly. So this is like a really cool way to learn about Riso without a financial barrier.
And you talked a little bit about the process of Riso in the beginning, but what can they expect when they come in? You're going to have maybe some like recorded videos, you said, of like you going in and out of the printer.
Yeah, I'll prepare some recorded videos of like me using the Riso in my home studio. And also just some like foundation education around risograph printing. And then I'll also have like some samples of the work and like be able to answer questions. But I think like for one thing that I hadn't mentioned about the Riso printing that is interesting is that my Riso is like a one color system. So you are able to print with these like beautiful spot colors that you can't get in a typical printing scenario. So fluorescent pinks, fluorescent oranges, metallic golds. And with my printer, you learn it, my duplicator, you actually load it in one color at a time. So that's like kind of the biggest difference is the drums of the different ink colors from this and a traditional like a laser printer, inkjet printer.
Awesome. What else? What else am I not asking that maybe you want to touch on, either about your process or about the experience so far in This is your first residency, right?
Yes. I think that I think the only thing that I can think of is that when I first started as a designer, when I was in art school, I was like, I'm not really interested in traditional media or like print media. When I first started, I was really bored by those things and thought that they were like old fashioned and like not with the times. And the more that I've like kind of moved through my design career, the more I've like pulled back to them. And I think what a lot of people maybe miss, and what I had missed about that at the time, is that what I find fascinating about using the die cut machine and the Riso printing techniques is that they actually are quite technical processes, and they leverage like modern technologies. The Riso is an old machine, but I'm using all the modern creative tools and then figuring out how to speak to an older machine. So it's like in a lot of ways it's like a complicated engineering problem at times.
Translation process too.
Yeah. So I would just like, if you're a young designer or just like interested in print, I think that it can actually be a quite innovative process, and not necessarily just an old one.
That's awesome. Really excited to see that take shape. So thank you so much for talking to us about the residency. Where can people see more of your work, connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website at samrich.co. You can find me on Instagram at samrich.co. You can find me on Dribbble at samrich, and I'm also on LinkedIn under Samantha Richardson.
Thank you so much, Samantha. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Talk Fulton. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.